My name is Stephen. I'm the head of social sciences at Ilisimatusarfik, which is the University of Greenland. I've been living in Greenland most of my life. That being said, I forgot to say that in the previous session, I do not speak on behalf of the Greenlandic people, nor do I present an indigenous or Inuit voice. This is a perspective from an academic that's been living in a community most of his life. So just bear that in mind, please. I think Christina is going to help us with my slides. Even if the slides aren't that pedagogical, I think I can walk us through them and talk a little bit about that. I'm gonna talk a little bit about research or homelessness research in Greenland in a social political perspective, which is basically what I do when I'm not heading the social science department, which today covers social work, social science on a master's level, and business economics. And plus some other smaller educational services we have at the university. So next slide, please. Here we go. So this is where we're located in the world. Greenland is between Iceland and the North American continent. World's biggest islands, 81% covered by ice. I was about to say snow, but there's snow above the ice, obviously. So while you are experiencing a very warm Scandinavian winter, the Greenland is having a sort of a warm winter as well, but we are way into the minus degrees as usual. Greenland is located between Iceland and North America, but is geopolitically connected to Europe and part of the Danish realm, but do have obviously self-rule since 2009. There's a total population of 56,000 people. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the demographic split up in different ethnicities. The main part is Greenlanders, 51,500 people. 4,000 Danes, 500 Filipinos, Thais, Icelanders, and Faroese. So we're not calling it a multicultural society. It's basically two main cultures. There's an indigenous Inuit culture and a Western representation, and obviously some Eastern representation, but not on a very small scale. 88% of the inhabitants are living in the towns. I'm told not to say cities by people, but I keep saying that. In a Greenlandic perspective, a city is a pulsating place with above 2,500 people or so. But in a general generally speaking, it's obviously a town with perhaps Nuuk, the capital, resembling a city, together with Ilulissat, Sisimiut, and Qaqortoq in the south. The population is steadily getting older. To that degree, we are looking like the rest of the world, with a growing majority of the population that is aging, leaving a smaller and smaller part of society managing the services for the rest. So that is a future welfare challenge for us. We are moving towards the city, leaving behind us some of the smaller settlements. That is also a cultural concern because it's changing the social and the cultural fabric of the country. The main industry in Greenland is still fisheries, but we are looking towards respective resources, mining industries, and tourism is on an incline. Next slide, please. Greenland is a welfare society, understood the way that it is a mindset of the whole society that we take care of people, that we accept a high level of tax on our income, and that we also understand that a very large public system or social system is put in place to take care of different necessities. But we are suffering from, I'm not saying suffering, but we are challenged by what I would call and have been calling unfocused social policies. These are social political strategies that still needs to be made on a municipal and a national level. But I'll get into that as we go along. Christina, next slide, please. Thank you. Homelessness and the root cause of the homelessness has been a scientific problem for us for some years now. We've been working with this for 6 years, and we are constantly working with trying to describe, trying to better our analysis around these problems. We are doing this work not out of a strict academic concern, but out of a concern around social justice, about creating better Arctic social policies. The root of homelessness resembles the same sort of genealogy that you see around the world, with rapid urbanization, with a decline in healthcare services and social services in smaller places in a country, that being settlements and smaller cities in Greenland. Some places we're seeing that they are closing down the healthcare services for people on maternity, trying to give birth, that they have to move into the cities for a short while before moving back. We are seeing a decline in therapy services, and possibly also a decline in schooling, and all of these different factors sort of support the theory that we are looking at what we are calling a second centralization in Greenland, with way more people moving into the cities, and also people that do not have a clear idea on where to stay, or they are being pushed out by negative structures. Yeah. Next slide, please. One of the things that's a challenge for us is we do not yet have a public legislation or public policies defining what homelessness is on a national basis, and that causes concern on a local level, on a municipal level, because we need definitions in order to set up services aimed for people in this situation. In our research, we are working with a workable definition called homelessness is a situation where one rightfully does not have a safe and secure, steady place to stay. We've added the thing around security because we've seen and talked with a lot of women, and they seem to emphasize the security before the material need that is more apparent when we talk to men or the male population. They want a job, they want a house, and the women are basically looking for security first, and then housing second, without going into the whole housing first theory yet. Next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, here we go. So this is a graph. I'm not going to show you a lot of these, I promise, but this is a graph about from Nuuk, and you can see from the beginning of the graph, that's in 1994. We had a population between around 12,700 people or so, and then a rapid incline towards 18 or 19,000 in 2020. And prospects are talking about a number around 30,000 people living in Nuuk around the year 2030. Next slide, please. This is the general population in Greenland, and as you can see, it's not really moving. It's a pretty steady growth. It's a pretty steady number, around 55,500 people or so. So it's navigating around maybe 1,000 people going up and down. Some are moving to Denmark, but not a lot of people are moving to Greenland and staying there, and it's not causing an incline in population. Next slide, please. Oh, so this is just to show you guys some environmental pictures around the country. This is from a smaller town in southern Greenland called Narsaq. Narsaq experienced a lot of migration away from the city, causing because of the causes that I talked about earlier, declining in different sort of services, and then a decline in housing need, actually. So they are tearing down houses, they are tearing down smaller apartment blocks, because they don't have any inhabitants in them. So next slide, please. So here you see, I know this is ridiculous to look at in a very short while, but I hope that they'll be made available on the Socialstyrelsens website very soon in the future. But if you follow the orange peaks that is very visible in the graph here, that's the inhabitants of Nuuk, and that basically resembles the slide from previous, where the graph goes upwards. And what you see below are the major towns around Greenland that are pretty much at the same level, except maybe Sisimiut, the Greenland's second largest town, which is seeing an increase in citizens at the moment, but that doesn't go for the rest of the country. So when we're talking about 30,000 people living in Nuuk in the year 2030, they are coming from the rest of the country, migrating and centralizing themselves in the capital. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is just a picture, and a historic and a closely modern picture from downtown Nuuk. To your right, you'll see Nuuk from 1974. Rapid modernization at the time. Modern apartment blocks in concrete, shooting up in the hills. And in a lot of scattered houses around a large field in the middle of central Nuuk. When you guys look to the left, you'll see Nuuk around the year 2014. It's a different picture, and the picture is even more different today. If you guys look at the far left of the screen, there's a flat square. You can see it looks almost like a soccer field or a football field or something like that. And that's also being built upon, and you'll see a very large structure coming up in the next couple of years, which is the biggest school in the city that's going to house around 1,000 pupils. And that's a very large thing in a small town of around 18,000 people. Very modernized way of understanding what housing is all about. Some would say it's a very non-Arctic and non-indigenous way of building and thinking about housing. It's a very technical approach to the matter, but nonetheless, it's happening anyway. Next slide, please. So this centralization and the urbanization around Nuuk is obviously some of the root causes around homelessness and a spike in homelessness as a social issue. And some of the things that we are working around in our research is trying to document the different level of services just in the city of Nuuk. And in Nuuk, we only really have one emergency shelter that is able to house 72 people, and they've just recently had different spaces created. So a space that separates men from women. We have 16 container houses, The problem with, not the problem, well, it's a good solution, but the municipality sort of worked out what they called a work first program and not a housing first program. So they needed people to first maintain a steady job, and then afterwards they were allotted a house for which they pay rent. So that obviously wasn't a solution that was aimed at people in very dire need of housing, but with people with some level of resources. We also have a labor program, a day school, if you will, that calls Kofod School. They supply a daily services of integrating people to the labor market, or trying to work with people's resources and build on that whole empowerment principle there. And then there's the Salvation Army, a very independent NGO that works on a more existential level, just supplying warmth and a safe place to stay during the day. When we talk about Greenland in general and Greenland as a welfare society, it's basically a welfare society when you look at it in a critical or in a critical perspective. It's aimed for what we'll call the lower to middle class, but not really what elsewhere around the world you would refer to as working class, working poor, people outside the labor market. If you're completely outside the labor market and do not have a place of your own, you're allowed an allowance of 656 kroner every second week, and that barely covers food, and it does not cover anything else. Bear in mind, though, that the Greenland does have a universal welfare system with free healthcare, free medicine, and free dentistry. We do not have yet a real shelter where you can stay for a prolonged time, where you are secured your bunk bed, or you're secured a room that with a key that you can lock, or pay a small symbolic amount for you to stay in there. There are no emergency services for women, and this means that if you are experiencing domestic violence of the sorts, you have to wait it out to the next day or the next following day, when you can go and see a welfare worker, a social worker, that will then supply you with the possibility to use the women's shelter if they do have space. Without a working definition or a legal definition around homelessness, people experiencing homelessness are basically understood as the same group. So men, women, youth, and the elderly are all grouped together without us being able to work with differentiated needs. I mean, a young person around the year of 18 or 19 have very different future perspectives than a person in the age of 70. So that's one of the challenges that we are working with. We do not currently have real legislation around homelessness. There are no current social policies around the matter, but we are working with politicians around this. And for that sort of reasons, you don't see any real steady social services after 4 o'clock or in the weekends. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we did during this research, or actually doing this, we're still researching homelessness very rapidly, is that we are engaging with NGOs on a different level. We are conducting a lot of field work via an NGO called No Ini, that means no room. Together with the Salvation Army, we are hosting a soup kitchen every Wednesday from 4 to 8 o'clock. And it's all financed via the Red Cross. There is no public involvement in this. There's no municipal involvement in it, and there's no public funding in it at all. And to us, that was basically the most practical way of working, just setting up this collaboration between three NGOs. But after visiting Canada and the Scandinavian countries and stuff, it occurred to me that this is a very abnormal approach to try and work out some sort of social welfare solution. We've seen that in smaller countries as well. It would have been wonderful to see some more research, for instance, from the Faroe Islands. But in the Faroe Islands, it's the same sort of setup. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that they have a local Salvation Army that is basically run out of Norway. And it's the same sort of deal for the Salvation Army in Greenland. It's run out of the main Danish office, but it's housed in a building bought by the Salvation Army out of Los Angeles. So there is no public Greenlandic funding around that, and that's pretty rare. And I think that's something that we should work with in the future, because there are very big advantages in collaborating with public systems. But I think we'll get to that. Next slide, please. These are just some of the hallway pictures from different locations. To your left is the hallway pictures from the local shelter. If allowed, a recurrent resident of the local shelter might be able to get one of the blue cabinets and store some of their goods in there. But as you can see, it's not a lot of space to work with. And you sit there and you basically wait. It's a very quiet community, and then there are some sort of food service, and that's basically it. Not a lot of welfare services, not a lot of therapy, not a lot of social care in that setting. And to your right is the food line, soup kitchen line, for the services that the Noémie provides together with the Salvation Army. People are lining up. We are serving different meals. We are working together with people that are experiencing homelessness, and they are helping us prepare the food. It might be seal soup. It might be different kinds of soup. It might be a whole different dish all together. But this creates an evening service for people to enjoy, relax, have a meal, and have a talk with one another every Wednesday, together with some initiatives around the holidays as well. Next slide, please. This is the local group that we are working with. This is a mix of volunteer workers, guests in the local soup kitchen, and strange researchers that are taking part of this. I try and blend into this little group as much as I can, but people obviously know that I also conduct research and engage in social political debates around the needs of people in these situations. So just to let you know that it's a mixed group that we are working with. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we do in this little group, because a lot of us are basically nerds in a lot of ways, that we're very engaged in the work that we do, but we don't only want to serve meals. We also want to do a little bit statistics, a little bit documentation about our activities. And these are actually some of the only statistics around this, and it's not really a statistics, it's the total numbers of servings. I mean, every time we hand over a plate of seal suasa or soup or whatever, we mark it. We mark it in a little block beside it, and you can see every year there's an increase in the amount of services from 815 servings in 2014. It rose to 2,000. It rose to 1,000 around 2015, and then afterwards, it basically lingered around 2,000 servings per year, and it's the same for. We expect the numbers to be around the same in 2020. So it tells us a rapid decline in a need for this service, and a need to stay open and provide meals for people outside office hours, basically. Okay, next slide, please. So this is just a short overview of some of the ways that we've been collecting data for the last 6 years. We started this in 2014 on a slow basis, and then we really increased it the years after. We've been talking to politicians, to researchers, nurses, social workers, caseworkers, NGO staff, leaders. We did people on the street talks, qualitative interviews, participatory observations, public engagement through debates and stuff. And then we've moved on to more participatory ways of engaging with the community, trying to get their own voice out there through photo elicitation, through photo voice studies, through focus groups, and so on. We did a PIT pilot study in 2019, point in time count, which is basically one of the only acceptable or just publicly recognized ways of working with quantitative data when you are researching homelessness. It got halted over COVID-19 scare. I collaborated with a research team around the time, Dr. Kevin Perry, a research assistant called Maya, and a student I have called Gimbi Olsen. But we are hoping to pick up the pace again in 2022. Just we are working out the fundings around that. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, this is just one of my guys showing a little love. So just to put in an environmental picture there. So forgive me, next slide, please. Yeah, so different solutions in the short run, and we call them solutions because we really think that academic research can help facilitate a more social just way of combating homelessness altogether. We are realistic, of course, that we are not able to totally annihilate homelessness altogether, but it will help facilitate different data for the political system and hopefully engage them in more social political talks and more social political action in this group. And for that, we really need a real quantitative overview. That's not how you spell quantitative, Stephen. But anyway, I'll work that out for you guys. Apologize. But we need a point in time counts. That being count that you do one day, once a year, or 1 week, once a year. It is a notoriously different group to count. They are mobile, they move around like the rest of us. So it's not like counting houses or counting parked cars or anything like that. So you need some sort of system. And the statistics that we've had so far is pretty insufficient. So we need different ways to work with this. We also need to work with securing a real income foundation for people living under homelessness, but also for some of the NGOs working with this. The problem with the number before that there is an allowance around 656 kroner every second week. It's a number that will keep people in poverty, and it's way below the social economic services that you see in other Nordic or Scandinavian countries that are built on this social democratic welfare model. We are also, in the short run, hoping for more of what we call low threshold services that focuses on harm reduction, where women are able to enter on a more rapid pace if they are in a unsecure and unsafe environment, where people that are suffering from a lot of alcohol poisoning, alcohol abuse can seek services. That could be a steady service in a permanent building. It could also be mobile services that you see in other countries where you drive around in the bigger cities and provide help for people. This is just an example of the container housing, where they work with this work first program that all came down during the COVID-19 scare, where Greenland got locked down, and also this environment had to be people in this environment had to be separated, and you'll see that on the next slide, please. You'll see that on this picture here, where the local municipality of Kommunerafik Sermersooq raised different sort of tents. While this was visually probably a okay solution for people staying in this Arctic tent, it did resemble a refugee camp to me, and not probably the correct way of caring for people in need. Next slide, please. In the long run, we would like to see a more Arctic embedded housing first program, where we need to adjust the housing first to fit into an Arctic environment. There are already some initiatives around working with the NGOs, working with third sector, but that could definitely be a larger part of the solution in the future. The Greenlandic welfare system, together with the rest of the world's welfare system, is becoming more and more expensive. So the third sector will definitely also in Greenland play a bigger part. Together with the communication across municipalities, governmental bodies, and such. Next slide, please. Yeah, just another environmental picture of people enjoying themselves and singing. There are people behind the statistics, and these are real life stories, and there is a real need for people to engage on a social level as well. That's very important to remember. Next slide, please. So we are researching a very different way than a sociologist like Max Weber would have said. We are not in an arm's length, and we are not always objective. You probably can hear from my presentation here. Some of the stuff we do borders on activism, but it did make significant changes. We are there. We are there to communicate with the political level. So they experience that we are not that dangerous, and we are actually not about to criticize every breath we take. We engage in open talks about homelessness and the need of people suffering from this, and that had the effect of that 10 years ago we weren't able to talk openly about poverty, about people in poverty, children in poverty, families in poverty, and that's a different matter now. That means that it's a political concern. We are talking about it. We are also very aware that homelessness is not a social problem that just goes away. It's unfortunately there to stay. But with the work that we do, we move beyond surveys, even though they are very important. We try and do real work around research in this topic that will hopefully create a positive change. We have publication coming out all of the time. Catch my brilliant colleague Mille's report from Kofoed Skole called Fra Grønland til Gaden. Oh, that jumped. Mille also did a podcast that's accessible here. It'll be available on the website, so you can click the link. You can follow some of my stuff. It's out in the journal called Qualitative Social Work. And there's a future book coming out at the Toronto University Press called Housing, Homelessness, and Social Policy in the Urban North. Thank you guys so much for your time. Next slide, please. If we don't get to talk right now, please feel free to email me at star@uni.gl. I will be happy to answer any questions that I can.